You're listening to the Vint Wine Podcast, where you'll hear interviews and stories from around the wine world. From writers and critics to winemakers and sommeliers, we'll explore the people and businesses who are instrumental in shaping wine culture. Enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Vint Wine Podcast. I am your host, Billy Galanko, and today we are back with a very special interview for you. We have Krister Bengtsson, founder, publisher, creator of the Star Wine List. Now, the Star Wine List is something that I have been using for many years now. I feel like I started seeing it more and more. It came across my radar many times in my travels. Many of you who, if you're American, may have seen a lot of Star Wine List ratings or results when you were in Europe. And increasingly, they've expanded throughout the globe. They are now in 45 different countries. And Krister was nice enough to come on and share a little bit more about what inspired him to start the Star Wine List, what it's all about, the functions that they offer on the website, and how you should really use the website to get the most out of it. So what is the Star Wine List? Well, Krister will explain better than me, but essentially what it is that friend, that person that you trust for wine-related recommendations in any city, whether it be a restaurant, bar, what have you. They have ambassadors who are based in different regions or cities throughout the world. These are sommeliers, wine professionals, people who really know and appreciate wine. They go to these different restaurants or bars throughout the city and see their wine list, taste their wine list, and speak with the staff there. And if they like the list and it reaches their standards, they'll give it a star. Now, the ones that the ambassadors have directly visited get red stars. And if an ambassador hasn't visited it, but has seen their wine list online or spoken with people who work there and are familiar with the wine list, they'll get a white star. So essentially, unlike a Michelin star, there's no bar is going to get 3 stars. It essentially will only get a red star if it's recommended, a white star if it's recommended and nobody has visited. And that's essentially the system. Now, this started out in Europe and has expanded throughout the globe. Like I said earlier, it has 45 different countries. And there's a ton of unique features on the website that allow you to navigate the Star Wine List. When you go on the website, there's a number of things that you can click on, but at the top, you'll see wine guides, wine events, wine stories, and map. And what's really cool is they'll have these different stories or guides, and it's kind of like a longer form article where they're providing you information to help you learn, or the wine guides are quick blurbs of places that you need to know in each city. Now, if you would rather just search on your own rather than going through these kind of curated guides with a little bit of background on each, there is the map function where you can just zoom in on whatever city you're going to or your town, and you'll see a map of the red and white stars laid out across the city. Something that's very cool is if you go on to the Pro feature, you have to pay a little bit per month or per year. But what you can do there is then search a particular wine that you're interested in. I did some searches just for fun of random kind of quasi-unique producers here in Los Angeles, and it was really interesting. I could just type in, say, Sylvain Patai, and it would show me all the places that served his wine in Los Angeles. You can do the same for any city you're visiting, or you can just not put on a geographic parameter, and it will basically show you everywhere in the world that's on Star Wine List that's listing that wine. And this is really cool, both for wine drinkers and people who work in the wine industry. Say you work at a winery and you want to see where your wine is listed in a certain market. You can basically just type in the name, see where it's listed there, and then you can almost use that to backtrack into like, cool, this is where I want to send my salespeople to go because we don't have a listing there yet. Or the other way around, maybe you want to go and support that account even more. As a wine drinker, it really helps you narrow down the places that you might want to go. So sure, somewhere may have a list that you like or is recommended. Say it's a red star, cool, great wine list, but maybe you're a Burgundy head or you really are into Barolo. You can really nail down certain producers or at these certain places and get to know them. Maybe they have a specialty in a certain region or even a certain producer. So super cool functions. Also on the website, they have a couple other things like awards. They have Star Wine List of the Year, where different restaurants and bars around the world will qualify and win different types of awards. And then they have a ceremony for those awards in person, which is a really cool event. Allows people from all over the world who work in the wine industry to get together and celebrate. It was really cool to learn more about the platform. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been using the Star Wine List for years now. but not as a heavy user. I wasn't quite aware of all the different functions it had. It would just be when I was predominantly in Europe, I would be looking for best wine list in this city or top 5 wine restaurants in this town, and Star Wine List would pop up. And it was always great recommendations. And I highly recommend it. Now, when we're talking to Krister, he brings such a unique passion and drive to this project. It's so interesting. It came out of his own personal want to be able to help everybody in the wine world find the places that make their trips more enjoyable. But then he goes on to talk about how they're really trying to make it as not necessarily objective as possible. Of course, the ambassadors will have places that they have to cross off the list because it doesn't meet their standards, but the types of wines that he wanted to be able to talk about run the gamut. There are natural wine bars, there's super fine dining Michelin star restaurants, there's little bistros, everything in between. And he really does work hard to try to find these ambassadors who can appreciate all of those different types of wines and bring their perspective in their unique market. I hope everybody learns a lot from Krister. Definitely go check out the Star Wine List. It was a really fascinating interview for me, and I hope you enjoy it as well. So without further ado, here is Krister Bengtsson, founder and publisher of the Star Wine List. Hi, Krister. Thanks so much for joining today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm really excited to share more with our audience about the Star Wine List. I've come across these lists, and they've been really helpful in European travels in recent years, but I've seen it's expanded more and more. So I'm really excited to share your story and the story of the Star Wine List with our audience today.
I look forward to sharing our journey.
Yeah. Well, do you want to start with maybe a little bit of background on you and what kind of led you to starting the Star Wine List?
Yeah, thanks. My background is in media. I'm a journalist originally, and started out working in local news in Sweden, where I'm from, radio newspapers, and then online, more international. I worked a bit with CNN.com when they were launching websites for news in Europe. That was way back in the 90s, start of the internet. Then I started a few companies in media and wine along the way, writing about wine. Lived in Bordeaux, France for a while, and the interest in wine and everything around it was following along the way, and been part of the journey for quite a while.
Interesting. So were you an avid wine drinker or collector previously, or was it something that kind of crescendoed over time?
It actually started, and we were chatting about this, it actually started really taking off when I was traveling in Australia quite a bit when I was younger, and freelancing and writing, and spending quite a bit of time in South Australia, going to the vineyards there, Barossa Valley and McLaren Vale. And I just got hooked. The hospitality, the wine, the people, everything around it was like I think there it really started taking off. And it's been going on since then. And I love Burgundy as much as the next wine geek, but I still have a fondness for a big Barossa Shiraz since those early days.
Yeah, we're two peas in a pod. I thought I liked wine, and then I went to South Australia and drove all around when I was working my vintage, and absolutely fell in love with wine from there. I understand.
Yeah, it's an amazing country, and the people, everything, and wine. And back then, this was in the 90s, and it was a revelation starting there and then going into all kinds of places.
Well, and side note on the Australia side, if you're down there, you would almost think that the only wines worth drinking in the whole world are Australian wines, though, which is hilarious.
Yeah, well, I mean, like many winemaking countries, you're close to your own region. And that's the default. And it's if you're in France, that's mostly about French wines. In Italy, it's mostly about Italian wines. So I think it's natural.
Yeah, I love doing tastings though. We would do a few with like Pinot Noirs, and they would just always be like, "Mate, like that Burgundy is good, but this is the best right here." Like, why would you?
Yeah, fair enough.
So you've worked in journalism, you got your wine passion, and it continued to grow. What led you to have the inspiration to say there needs to be some other type of list, whether it be like the main publications or Michelin star, there needs to be something that kind of overlaps between wine and food and guidance.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I started a few businesses in communication media and a bit in wine. And back in 2017, I had some time and resources to start something new. And it was just an idea I had, let's call it a pain point of my own, really. You're traveling and going to places, and there's always good restaurant guides and the classics like Michelin and Gourmillot and everything. But when you're a wine lover, you end up often asking your friends, I'm going to Berlin, where should I go and drink wine? So I thought there's something missing there. Of course, you can find a guide from Decanter or from New York Times for a set piece in time, but I thought there's something missing there. We're trying to build, and it started in Stockholm in 2017, and with the idea to create a restaurant guide for wine lovers, basically, and I built it from there.
Interesting. So before we get into exactly what the Star Wine List is, did the system that you guys have in Sweden, did that impact or like further facilitate the need for an interesting restaurant wine list just because of what you can purchase on your own?
Yeah, I think that's a good comment. Sweden is a monopoly market for alcohol in retail. A lot of Canada, some US states and the North. So the retail offering is in state-owned shops and, limited in my view. But that means that the roles of wine bars and restaurants is, I think, even more important. And that's you can drop into your local wine bar, have a relationship with them, and they know you maybe and what you like and what you haven't tried. And you get a kind of a window out to the wine world there, which we don't have in retail shops. So let's say you live in Copenhagen or London or Paris, you probably have the wine shop that you love, and they get to know you and you can try things and learn and discuss. And we don't have that. So I think that makes it even more important. And I think you can see it too. If you go to Stockholm, the range you can find is quite incredible of good selections from around the world.
Yeah, that's something that previous to our conversation, I'd taken for granted that I could either go to my favorite shop or my favorite restaurant. But it's interesting to like the need to find good wine in somewhere where you may not be able to purchase it on your own. So that was really cool. Can you just explain to us, let's take a little step back about what the Star Wine List is, the web or the whole website, then we'll dive into the pieces and how it started.
Yeah, it's a guide to great wine bars and restaurants with good wine programs. And it is pretty much like a restaurant guide, but for wine lovers, including wine bars. And we want to be inclusive, to have all the way from a small natural wine bar to bistro and the big fine dining restaurants with good wine programs. The recommendations are made by wine professionals, usually somms, sometimes wine writers. And I think that's part of it as well, that it's a bit like coming to a city and asking, okay, which other places you would love to take us to and recommend. And that's also the criteria that we give to our ambassadors, so the people we work with in the different cities. And the main criteria is really, okay, if we come to your city, LA, which are the places you'd love to take us to? One night is a hip wine bar, and the other night is a fine dining restaurant, and build a selection from that and share those. And that's the core to the guide and the website and the app, which are kind of the core of it.
When you're first identifying these bars, is it mainly the ambassadors who are identifying places in their region, or are you guys scraping wine lists from the internet, or how are you going about identifying these?
No, when we start a city or a region, we start with the ambassador, which is a person that we think could give us a good selection and a good tour of their city. So that could be, for instance, Centel is in Barcelona. There used to be Samet El Bouilly, still working for El Bouilly and writes for Jancis Robinson, etc. So a fantastic guy. And we ask him, okay, we want to get started in Barcelona. So could you start by compiling the list of the places you love, and then we'll build the content around that and get his description or review of every place. Why do you love that place? And then we'll ask the restaurant for photos and their wine list if they want to share that, and put up all the information on the map and in the guides. And then we go for the launch of that. So that's kind of the way it goes. And those are the restaurants and wine bars we call Red Stars. They are the selections from our ambassadors and team and places that we've been to and love and can share.
And you just mentioned the Red Star there. What is the difference between the Red Stars and the White Stars you guys have?
Yeah, that's a good question. We started with the Red Stars, and it's been growing for a number of years, and we're building out the guides to cities. But we kind of kept getting questions from, okay, when are you going to start the guide for this part of this country? And people asking for more remote places. We said we're probably never going to cover some regions in a lot of the countries and never going to be able to go there. But there are a lot of places with cool wine lists. So we said, okay, why don't we make a second selection of places we haven't covered, we haven't been to, but we think the wine list looks qualitative. If you're going to this place, check out the wine list. And when we have the chance to go there one day, maybe we can then review it and put it as a red star. So that's the white stars. That's much less information. We just check out the wine list and say, okay, this looks good. But it's a bit of a different level of information and selection from the red stars.
Interesting. Cool. Your website is also not only for consumers, but also for professionals. Is that right?
Yeah, it's open for everybody. So really covering from professionals, from sommeliers who are heavy users to the wine trade as large, and wine lovers who like to go to restaurants. So it's crossing over those three audiences.
So would you say, that makes sense. So would you say the primary use for, say, somebody in the trade would be to identify maybe potential places to try to sell their wines or work through? Is that the case?
Yeah, I think so. But if you look on the trade, just if you're working in wine and you're traveling, it's nice to get a selection. I was talking to a negociant in Bordeaux, and he said, you saved my life in South Korea. It was really hard to find where to go. And he worked on this, used the selection for star wines to get around town in Seoul. For general interest, if you're in the trades, travel to Düsseldorf or wherever. But we also, we also heard that it's used quite a bit as a reference to parts of the trade. I was talking to one wine company, and they said they were using star wines as a reference to talk with the distribution. Let's say for Zurich in Switzerland, for instance, they'll tell the distributor there that, okay, these are the restaurants and star wines in Zurich. That's where you want to be, and your target is to reach X% of that. So it becomes a neutral reference between the parties. Sadly, that's not something we make money on, but at least they're using that part of it. And then we also produce some analytics, and there is a way to search the wine lists, which is a tool also, of course, if you're in the trade looking for, let's say, we had one case of an importer in UK who wanted to reach out more into restaurants. And they can use the search to see, okay, which other restaurants that are already carrying our types of wines and competition and things. And that gives them a good leads to work on and know which are the accounts that should be targeted.
So is that available for anyone? I guess, does it have the full list, or is it just like a database where you can type in like a producer and everywhere that has it will pop up?
Yeah, it's basically made of the wine list that we scan into our system and keep updated as much as possible. So you can search them for any kind of term, a wine producer or a particular region or other things, and get the raw material from there. So that's something we sell to the trade. We also have some parts that are a bit more advanced, kind of benchmarking on your brand in the distribution. For instance, you are on so many of our UK wine lists, and your main competitor maybe is in another, and then do quarterly reports on that and follow up and see is that targets to use. So that's something we do a little bit on the side for the trade. We're a media company, so you need a few legs to stand on to build this, really, and that's something that we're building out.
Nice. Let's pivot over here to what most people will be interacting with on a regular basis, besides your awesome map, is the guides. Can you share a little bit about what these guides look like and what information people can find?
Yeah, so they're targeting the main cities, regions. So if you're going to one region, such as Alsace, Bordeaux the city, you can search and find the guides either to wine bars or the restaurants in those cities. So it's a pretty comprehensive list of the places that are selected, that are the red stars in those regions. And I think it's cool if you're planning a trip, the guides are useful. Whereas if you walk in the streets of Paris and you want to find something close by, the app is quite effective. You just start the map on the app and see what's nearby in the blocks around you. That's the use case there.
Would you compare the descriptions on the guides? And I'm gonna use a couple of reference points that are more American here, but say when I'm looking for a restaurant, I look at like eater articles, and like Infatuation, does it have a description of the overall wine list like that?
Yeah, we of course the descriptions are made by our ambassadors, and some are writers and some are somms, and some may have English as a distant third language in Asia. So the style and text and everything is different in different places. And we allow it to be that. You'll see that, okay, these are the recommendations from this person. It becomes a little bit personal. But what we like to have answered in each description is, first of all, what kind of place is it? Is this a fine dining place, focus on Italian food, or is it a place you love to go on Sundays with your family to grab a pizza? And then what kind of wine program is it? And why do you like it? It's my go-to place for Monday nights out and just grab a glass of wine. It's review, a description, personal thoughts on the place.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've found most helpful is there are, and you mentioned maybe like other wine publications posting things with great wine lists, and they'll just talk about only the caliber of the list. They will give you very little detail about what the place is like. So it's like, cool, that sounds great, but I don't want to sit for a 5-hour tasting menu meal. I just want some good wine. So I think that's, to me, one of the most valuable aspects.
Yeah, thanks. And I think a lot of time now as well, any place in the world can have a great wine service and great wine program. And the lists don't have to be huge either. It can be really concise, lovely selection, and you'd have an amazing evening in that place, and it's very casual. Whereas other nights, maybe you want to go for the full 3-star experience, but it's become, I think, more diverse in that way. You don't need to have the huge books and cellars to have a great wine place.
You mentioned natural wine bars, and that's something I'm more familiar with, as I think I'm on one of the hot spots like Paris, where there's 10 natural wine bars within walking distance of me here. Are you seeing a different audience coming on to the star wine list for specifically that, or are you seeing kind of an overlap between your current base?
I think it's very diverse, and we've seen that our audience is fairly young. On our web analytics show that 25 to 34 is the biggest age group, so it's quite a young audience overall. And I think also maybe contrasting now to 10, 15 years ago, it's less of a polar world in gastronomy in the world. It used to be, okay, you're definitely for or you're against natural wine. I think now it's really blended. If you're going to do a fine dining restaurant and you want to be in seen as contemporary modern, you need to have top natural wines as well on the list, I think. Probably not the most funky stuff, maybe, but at least some benchmark low intervention wines. I think that's become part of what's needed nowadays.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's something we talk about on this podcast fairly often is that a lot of some of the best wines in the world that people may have loved for decades are lower intervention and would be considered quote unquote natural. And I think some of these wine lists are starting to merge and evolve, which I think are really interesting. So that's a great point. Trying to figure out, I have so many questions for you, where I want to go. The first one is, you started in Europe, now it's global. Was that ever the intention? Were you just trying to be initially like, I want to have Europe, I need it for my own personal use? Or now is it like bigger than you ever thought?
Yeah, no, it had to be international from day one. And I think that was a bit unusual maybe from when you start something. First of all, we started in Scandinavia, which is a fairly small market. And I think the audience that, let's look at the people going out tonight in LA or Stockholm to restaurants, it's maybe 10% of those who really care about what they drink. And that's our audience. I think that's not big enough to do that in one country if you want to build something consequential. So we wanted to build the global map, the international network from day one, and to do it fairly fast, but with quality, and build the network of people. And I think the wine world and people working in it and the Psalms working in these restaurants, it's a very international network and group. They're moving from places and working in London one year and maybe New York the next. So I think it's logical to follow that and build on that and be wide from day one. So we wanted to build it wide. It's now in about 45 countries. So after 8 years, I think that's starting to look good. When we started, I told the team as well that it's probably going to take about 10 years to build something useful, really international useful. And so ask me again in 2 years where we are.
Well, you guys are ahead of schedule. And then with this global footprint, I think you guys obviously have gained credibility. I think, as I've mentioned before, I feel like every time I go back to Europe in particular, and now increasingly here, I see your guys' results popping up or as recommendations. Has that led to your awards getting more gravitas? You guys have an awards, if you want to talk about that a little bit, and then maybe what that means in the...
Yeah, if you start with the recognition followed by the use, and yeah, I think it's happened quite a bit in the last, let's say, 2 years. One part is definitely we've been very fortunate to get a lot of amazing people join the network and either as ambassadors to share their recommendations or as judges in our awards, which is quite an incredible group of people, almost 100 people around the world who are in the network. Very grateful for that. And I think that's also been starting to play that others think, okay, I want to be part of this, or can we work together, or I feel that it's built on quality. Our recommendations are not TripAdvisor or crowdfunded. It's really hand selected, right? So that takes a bit of time, but at least someone has made the choice and selection. And I was in France this summer, and it's quite interesting to see France is a little bit analog, we can call it, in the world. It took perhaps a little bit of time to get started for us there. We started early. We had a great ambassador in Paris first, Thomas Simeon, another great one, Pierre Villapalekra. And first year or so, of course, it's like online and things like that. It didn't take off super quick, but now it's really taken off. And I talked to sommeliers this summer, and they get a lot of guests and visitors, international travelers, finding them through Star Wines. And of course, it's people are interested in wine and happy to spend on the wine list. The recognition there has become quite strong.
Very cool. Yeah. Pierre is great. I actually got to go to Burgundy with him as part of our MW studies this year. So that's great to hear that you have him on your
amazing. I'm envious. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, no, he knows so much. It's awesome. And I learned a lot just from being with him, much less the actual program we were on. So
yeah, we're very fortunate to have him as our ambassador in Paris, that's for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, so can you tell us a little bit about the types of awards you have? Because in my mind, I was almost comparing it to like the James Beard, but just for wine, rather than wine being like a subcategory.
Yeah, so the awards we started the awards also in the Nordics a little bit later on. We wanted to create some kind of event and a celebration after starting the guides. And we said, okay, let's focus on the wine lists, the wine programs, and the teams behind them. Started first with a local celebration and in different categories such as Best by the Glass and Best Sparkling Wine List. And also there working with top sommeliers, international teams, experts to do the judging. So you have an international perspective, and the restaurants and bars send in their lists, and we the jury pick out the finalists, and then we create a celebration around it. And it's really been taking off. It's a little bit parallel from the guides. So the wine list awards are on parallel tracks with the guides, but they're very closely related. We did our first event in 2018 in Stockholm, and now over the past year, we've done it around the world in 3 continents. We did our first event this year in Tokyo, Barcelona, and Miami. And we've done them several years in New York, London, Paris, etc. And it's really been fun, amazing to get the communities together, and you have the local and the international connections, and building the ties around that. It's quite a lot of work, but so much fun doing these things.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting part about your guys' events, and what I wanted to ask a little bit more is, since you did start by using industry folks to help give insight, I think that helped give credibility right away. But then there's almost like an ownership or like a pride in how it's grown and wanting to get together to talk to each other about it. Does that translate down to the users as well? Are these events open to everybody?
No, well, actually the events are quite small and closed. We've so far only invited the finalists. And we do them very casually. It's no black tie gala or anything. We just invite them for walk around tasting with our partners, get together in a restaurant or event space, and then the awards on stage, and then a bit of mingle and tasting afterwards. Very casual, come as you are, and get together. And because it's a finalist only, in some cities, let's say London and New York, it's kind of rare for these people who work in these top places to actually have time to catch up and hang out and have a drink and do that, and not be crowded by 900 other people in a huge trade setting. So the intimacy of that has become something we want to keep doing. But we see as well that we get a lot of questions, doing more things and maybe other things for other parts of the community, students. So we're thinking about doing a few other types of gatherings where we can invite more people. But stay tuned for that.
Do you find, I I have a lot of friends, and I'm one of these people where it's like if I discover a really useful app or a website early on, and I've been using it when everybody else finds out about it, I feel like I knew about that before it was cool. Do you have these super fans for Star Wine List?
Yeah, it was funny. We were just planning our first event in the Netherlands, and I was just talking to two Dutch importers yesterday, and one of them was a guy. He said, "Yeah, you remember we met in Wine Paris like in 2019 or 2020, and I was already a fan of Star Wine List." I thought, "Yeah, you were an early super fan of Star Wine List," so he was very happy about that and using it a lot. I don't know. I feel it's still early days. If you look at trade and Psalms restaurants around the world, there are quite a few using us and etc. But I think hopefully if you ask me in a number of years, consumers and more wider audiences that maybe are readers of Decanter, Wine Spectator, etc. today, I think there's more for us to do there. And in all aspects, it still feels like we're starting out and building it.
You started out like very like democratic way of having local folks go to these different bars. Has anybody ever been like, will we ever get a Krister's list? Will there be like a gold star that's just places that you really like?
Yeah, possibly. I do a few write-ups here and there, and especially if I've been to a place that maybe the ambassador in the city hasn't covered yet in the big cities. It's endless. So I'll put in a few of my favorites. Yeah, my top 10 somewhere. That could be a good one. We'll see on that. Some people will be unhappy, of course, if they're not on it. But there's so much to choose from everywhere you go. I think every time we launch a new guide and I'm looking through the material, reading the text and looking at pictures, I'm like, oh my God, this looks amazing. I need to go to Warsaw or any place and just go through it. The international scene is really huge with quality. People are ambitious, young people we're going to do our event in Dubai and the UAE in December. And there's such a melting pot of young professionals from all over the world in the kitchen, service, hotels, Psalms. It's quite incredible dynamics around the world happening and seeing where they take things and get new inspirations. It's really cool. And I think the one thing I'm quite pleased with is that we have, I think, a very international perspective, that we have interviews with our ambassador. Okay, what's going on in Vietnam now and the wine scene, or Macau and in LA, and you can hear these voices and see what's going on in different parts of the world. I think that's a cool thing for us to learn from and to see that things are happening and not just in the big name cities.
Yeah. I had a question about how you guys remain objective in your rankings, and I'll table that for a second. Based on your Dubai comment and I guess even Vietnam, even though they're ratcheting up some of their taxes on alcohol at the moment. But how do you find that the Star Wine List actually is helping shape some of these really emerging markets? Like something that like Dubai is just like, it's going up like a hockey stick right now in terms of wine popularity. How do you find the wine list being used there, the Star Wine List?
I think it is. I think we've become quite a go-to tool for a lot of Psalms around the world. For just one party searching the wine list, we give away the logins, the search for Psalms at restaurants that are listed by us. So I know a lot of Psalms in Copenhagen, London, New York. If they're thinking about listing new wine, they'll go on Star Wines and search, okay, see who else in the city is working with this wine and benchmark their pricing and use it as a tool for that. Or just see, okay, what's on the wine list in a city I admire, what's on the top wine list in Paris, what's going on in New York, and get inspiration and follow people I admire. And of course, we put the focus on the wine service and not the chefs. Naturally, we become closer to the sommelier community. Like one sommelier in Stockholm said, half in jest, that all the chefs have been on TV and are millionaires. So it's nice that someone cares about the front of house for a change, which is exaggerating a little bit, but it's a fun comment.
Yeah. I think everybody, after the movie Somm came out, a lot of people thought that being a sommelier was this like glorious, everybody was rich and famous position, and they definitely need more respect. So I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, it's hard work, of course. If you work in restaurants, well, even if you leave the floor and work in an executive position or work in the trade, otherwise, the glamour part of it is fairly small.
Yeah. I was just chatting with a guy who was a server, a sommelier at a place in Menagio by Lake Como, and he was just like, "Yeah, like early 40s and I'm considered very old to be doing this still, working the floor. But I love it. So I'm here and making sure. And yeah, it's a passion project for sure. I wanted to go back to my objectivity question. As you have these ambassadors, how do you make sure there isn't like a bias, or when they're new to a market, they're not just going to their friends and only listing those?
Yeah, I think first of all, they're not anonymous. You'll see that in Flanders, Antwerp, in Belgium, for instance, it is Tom Yeven, top sommeliers, the ambassadors. It's his selection. Some are more into classic wines and some are more natural leaning. So you'll have kind of personalities. And if you're involved in a wine program or in any way, we're not adding in new selections that you're working for a restaurant. There'll be some other ambassador that has to visit that place to add it if you're working in a restaurant. If you've had insights before, etc., we'll mark it. Okay, this place was, our ambassador used to work there. So there's a bit of transparency to show that what's been going on before. Yeah, I think it's interesting. In some places, I get the question, well, how can you do this? They're only going to list their friends. And I feel like that's maybe a little bit on how you view the world. I think a lot of them are quite strong. And actually, we heard quite a few places where they just turn down a lot of people they know pretty well. They say, well, you're not there yet. You're not one of my favorites in the city. Keep working on it.
Yeah, I think I would counter what that person said. And so, like, when I want to know what a good wine bar is, I ask my wine friends, my sommelier friends. In reverse is actually, they know the best anyway. They're not going to, I actually even, sorry to go off on a tangent here, but I even know some somms who will be like, I don't really like this person who runs their wine list, but their wines are amazing. And you got to go. It almost pulls out the bias when you have the wines.
Yeah. I mean, but of course it's the people, right? There could be a bias here and there. And we see it's a mosaic, and there's so many recommendations going around here in the network. So I think it balances it out in the end.
Awesome. Well, when you're talking and thinking about the Star Wine List for the next 2 years, is your 10-year mark, and then 5 years and beyond, what are you guys looking for in terms of development? What's next?
We're keep building up the awards events. We're also looking to rework a little bit our analytics and a membership to relaunch a membership that's useful and for wine lovers and let's say small and medium sized trade. The stuff we've done more for the trade now has been a bit more for the bigger players, such as possibility to search the wine list and things like that. I think you'll see more of that during the fall, where you can try that out and find other features and advantages going into being a member of Star Wines. But we're still testing that a little bit. Let's stay tuned on the socials and the newsletter. Yeah, we're actually going to start. We're going to do our first dinner. That's one of the restaurants that won a lot of awards. We call it the Gold Star Dinner. We're going to do it at a restaurant called Park Hotel in Norway. It's out in the West Norway wilderness. Has an incredible wine program. We said, okay, we want to start doing something that readers, wine lovers can join. So we're going to do a special dinner with great wines one night and go there and do that together with them. So more community events, more coverage, a bit more of everything, I think.
Awesome.
And there are lots of parts of the world where we're not strong. South America and Africa. We have South Africa. We have Buenos Aires and Mendoza. But there's plenty of things to do in the rest of those regions. But so we'll get there. I'm joking a bit sometimes with the team and said, okay, when someone asks me, okay, what's the end game of Star Wines for me? And the end game is that the team is taking care of the tech stuff and all that stuff. And you can find me traveling kind of the outback of Namibia and Botswana and places like that and finding cool wine bars. And you can reach me every now and then and get there.
Oh, nice. We have similar goals in life.
Yeah.
So if I'm somebody listening right now who's never used Star Wine List, how would you recommend going about accessing and using the platform?
Just go on starwines.com. I think the website, download the app. The app is a little bit lighter in content than the website. And if you're in a city which has a large selection, have a look on what's near you. Or if you're thinking about going on a weekend trip somewhere or traveling, have a look and see what's going on. Check out the interviews with some of the ambassadors, what's going on in different cities. We had Chicago recently, update, Berlin, Copenhagen, etc., and see what's going on. And check out the wine lists. That's quite interesting to see. How do the wine lists look in different parts? Check out the awards as well, the stories we have there, and see the winners. It's quite interesting. For instance, we had our international final now in June. We have the winners from different countries around the world. We do it like an international tour. And then the winners in each event are invited to the international final, either in person or online. And this year we did it in Vienna back in June. And we had sommeliers and teams from 20 countries flying to be part of it. So it was quite an incredible day. And one of them was Jay, who's the somm at Indi, a place in Bangkok, Thailand. And he's created quite an incredible, creative, beautiful wine list. So yeah, let's put that in the notes if you have them, and let people check that one out. It's just an inspiration work of art to look at and follow through. And things like that come from different parts of the world.
Yeah, fantastic. I wish I had that recommendation last year before I went to Bangkok. It's definitely not a wash with creative wine lists there. So that's awesome. I missed earlier. How are the winners selected? Is there like a rating list of things you guys give scores to, or how does that work?
Yeah, for the awards, what we do is that we invite the restaurants and bar to apply, and for different categories, long, medium, and short, it's pretty obvious, but by the glass and sparkling. And then we have different categories. This year we're running best Italian wine list, best Austrian wine list, sustainability category for restaurants, and that work answers survey on how they work with sustainability through their whole programs. And then the juries with top sommeliers go to work and say, okay, which are the shortlisted here? We have some guidelines that need to be met, but we also give it quite a lot of freedom to the juries, because you have really top people in the world in the juries, like the best sommelier of the world. The 3 last best sommeliers of the world are in the jury panels, and top people, and give them a lot of freedom. Okay, which are the most exciting, inspiring wine lists in this country in these categories? And they vote for them. And then the scores are compiled to jury discussion. And then they discuss and hash it out. Okay, these are the finalists, and I think this one is the best. And are you for it? And then come to a decision. Okay, well, this one is going to be the best by the glass list in the UK this year. And then we have a party and announce it. So it's not so formulaic. We don't want to arrive at a time where people say, well, this is following the Star Wines template. This is how Star Wines look. We want to be inspired about what people are doing and not do templates for them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. It's like, you don't have like a rubric where it's like, how long is the list? 1 through 10 points. And then how many different producers do they have? 1 through 10 points. You're not doing that.
No, and sometimes that's frustrating for people, and I understand it. Some people are putting a lot of work, are competitive, and they'll say, okay, it was great to be a finalist. What can I work on till next year? We say, well, just keep working on what you believe in, because next year the jury is going to be different as well. So we can't guarantee that. If I tell you you should buy more of that category, it's not a guarantee that it's going to be the answer. So some people can be a bit frustrated with that, but sorry, that's life.
Yeah, no, I think that's the way it should be. I think wine itself isn't cut and dry. There's always exceptions, and there's no one right way to do things. And I think you're following the right path with that, with your scoring.
Yeah, we'll see. I think also in a lot of these places, it's just really competitive just to be a finalist. We're lots of great places. That's quite an achievement just to get through that.
Nice. Well, we're running a little bit up on time here, but before we go, what are you most excited about in the world of wine right now? Or is it a region you're drinking, or what is inspiring you at the moment personally?
I think it's cool that there's just so much good stuff coming out from so many places a year, and some regions that were really unknown very recently are producing top wines. I think, and if we're looking back, maybe 20 years ago, you had your standards and kind of default top regions. And that's really been broken up. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and reasonable price points, top quality wines coming out from so many countries. And more, I think, being respected for it as well. Let's say New Wave, South Africa, amazing wines and getting the respect they deserve. Yeah, I'd say the diversity and interesting stuff. And it's pretty brutal to be in blind tastings nowadays. I don't envy you for being in the MW program. That's going to be hard figuring where things come from. But yeah, a lot of choice. I like that.
Yeah, well, I completely agree. And I think that's a perfect place to leave it. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
All right. That was our interview with Krister Bengtsson of the Star Wine List. I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation. I know I learned a ton, and now I go check the Star Wine List all the time. If you are traveling anywhere or work in the industry and want to see where your wine is sold in each market where Star Wine List is present, definitely check it out. And for now, that is our episode for this week. We'll be back with another 5 questions on Friday and a wine report, a new weekly wine report on Monday. Cheers.